Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Night Vision, or welcome to Night Vision if this is your first time. Hope it won't be your last. Today we've got a great show planned. Our wonderful historian, James Martin, is back to rejoin us. We haven't seen him in a while, so we're very excited about that. But let's just get started. Let's bring James on right now, and let's don't waste any more time. Hey, you.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back. For me, it feels like it was just yesterday, but I think it wasn't.
It's been a while.
Good to see everyone.
It's I've missed it. But, we were going to talk about some of the mysteries that surround that certain area of southern France where we like to go and spend time and look around and dig. And especially you're the best digger, not literally, but into the records and into the archives to find little known gems. I'm thinking of one particular property that we knew about that was for sale, that was being advertised by the owner and the realtor, the immobilier, as being medieval built, but you were able to identify that building was actually built in the 800s, somewhere in the 9th century. And to this day, no one knows that except for you and me and a little handful of people, I guess. But now, but nobody knows which location we're talking about. But that was quite clever. And I remember the time that you found some kind of record that made you go out and look out on the ground, and you actually discovered this ruin of a Moorish castle that, was distinctly different, type of building than the other ones that we're used to seeing around there. So it was very identifiable, but I'd never heard of that anywhere in the area. And when I mention it to people, even to this day, they're baffled by that. So we'll see what else we can turn up today. But before we get started on all that, I'd like to remind people that your book that you co-authored along with Tim Wallace Murphy is available for sale. It's called Uncharted, A Rediscovered History of Voyages to the Americas Before Columbus. And we all know that there were lots of those, or at least we do now. We didn't for a long time. And even more exciting than that, James has been putting together a trilogy of the entire history of the Knights Templar, beginning way before the establishment, the circumstances that were present to cause them to be established, and on through till the time that they were so-called disbanded in 1307 and went their separate ways. Where did they go? That sort of thing. So James has been looking into all that, and I guarantee this is going to be like the definitive history on the Knights Templar. This will be all you need. And there'll be 3 volumes. The first one's going to be Order of Magnitude. And the second one is, you got them, Out of Order. All right, the downfall of the Knights Templar. And then what could be after that? Last Orders. The impacts of the Knights Templar, which have been very strong. And there's something about the Knights Templar that really captivates the imagination of everyone. And sometimes we kind of twist it into our own version of who we wish that they were. But on their own and in their own real history, they were just such an interesting group of warrior monks. And I think there is something, very romantic about that idea that they had, basically given up all their worldly goods to serve a higher purpose. And I wonder what we'll find out about where they went. I know some of it. I know some of them ended up in Spain because they were.
Yeah, and I actually, been in writing this, so it's one of these order of magnitude. Well, because it's me, starts the beginning of the Templars starts at the end of the book. This lays the foundation for a lot of the myths that we accept. So there's lots of stuff about the Merovingians, for example. We were just talking before the show about the Merovingians, and actually they didn't really have that much of an impact. But we look at them, who the Carolingians were then after them, and also where some of the origin of some of the relics that the Templars were. It was supposed that they had access or knowledge of, including, and I will give a little bit of a tidbit about this, that it might be, and like I said, this is more for questioning rather than, there's an answer, because it just struck me that the rumours of the knights finding an object in the Middle East was a bit unusual, because back when the Templars were established, and in fact long before, the number of so-called relics that were being found suggests there was quite an active black market for forgeries and others, perhaps. But it did occur to me that if you wanted to have stranglehold of the church of the time, it would perhaps be more likely, if indeed they found anything, that perhaps they found a copy of some of the Gnostic texts, or refound them actually. And that in itself would have been exceptionally explosive. We know that they venerated Mary Magdalene, for example. It could very well be then that they found her gospel.
Now, speaking of those texts, obviously, the Nag Hammadi Library, or the Gnostic Gospels, as they're known, were not known for a long time. I think it was in the 1940s when they were actually discovered. But if they're the Gnostic Gospels and the Templars found them, then obviously the church wouldn't want that known. And that's probably another thing that went down into the secret archives. But I heard recently, and you probably know the answer to this, that the Vatican is in process right now of digitizing the secret archives. And someone was hinting that it was going to be available. I can't see that. I can see them digitizing it, for safekeeping, but I don't see them making that available to the public when they've been so precious about it. Even, cultural items that they've taken from people like Native American tribes, they don't even allow the tribe to view those objects. And that's their sacred objects. That's their Ark of the Covenant, basically. And but the Vatican gathered all those ceremonial items up and keep them secret. Well, number one, why? And number two, if they've done that, then why are they now just going to turn it over?
The thought experiment with that one is, if it was a Vatican researcher who found the Nag Hammadi library, would we know about it? And if you're thinking the answer is no, then that should give you a rough idea as to where my view is on digitizing. Of course, I think there will be documents that are digitized that we do know about.
Right.
They'll be available, I'm sure, with a small fee and all of that.
Right.
But I can't see some of the other things. I mean, there are things out there that could have been discovered that we don't know about.
Yeah.
There's lots of things like that.
There must be.
Yeah, I can't see. I mean, I give you an idea at the time of this show. So if you're watching in the future, I hope the future is bright. But yeah, there's an issue in the UK at the minute around access to documents relating to Queen Elizabeth and her husband Philip. That there's an arbitrary 100-year prohibition on accessing any of the texts and diaries and other such things.
Right.
For what reason exactly? And that's prompted quite a large debate. So I'm not, you know, I'm not pessimist in this way. I mean, the Nag Hammadi Library, I have to say, you know, it was found, and some of the scrolls were burnt because it was seen as it's just firewood. So
right.
We have probably lost some things. However, I don't believe that they are the only copies. It would be exceptionally unusual for they to be the only. So the Earth is a large place. You never know where they might end up. I mean, for that one, it was a cave. I think it was something like 46, 47. It was after the Second World War, around then.
Yeah.
And yeah, you never do know. But yes, you know, continuing on the book, where I am at the minute is just a few tantalizing chapters, 2, in fact, from concluding, and I'm just just writing at the minute a chapter on the Vikings. And of course, the reason for that is we know that Norse, to really give them their proper name, people knew them as the Norse. Viking is a job title, meaning explorer, trader, that kind of thing. But we know some of the families of the Norse ended up in the Templar Order. But crucially, there's a possibility of a proto-Templar order in Norse culture, and these were called the Jomsvikinger, and these were essentially religious officials with swords, probably with axes, I've got to say. And there is a scholarly debate as to whether they existed, but it is such an unusual thing to make up, and for what purpose? That, you know, certainly the idea of warrior monks. There are some examples of them in history. William of Gellon, definitely, you know, he was a monk with a sword in the end, I suppose. There are some flavors of something like the Knights Templar before them, that maybe these ideas coalesced through family lines and through other connections into their founding. But I have to say, you know, I will let everyone know when the book is complete. It's been a lot of research, well over 300, 400 source materials. So if that's, you know, what gets you up in the morning, you'll be able to read where I've either given my opinion, but mostly this is from academic sources. And there's some things in there that I'll tell you what, I'll give you a bit of an exclusive on this one. So I remember attending a conference with Tim Wallace Murphy, and there was I think Henry Lincoln was there, to be honest, as well. And there was a discussion around Jewish Templars, and this very serious historian said, "Oh no, nothing like this. They were a Catholic order." But what's unusual is I have found plenty of examples, in fact, but one family of brothers, a guy called, he was a rabbi actually, called Ben Eliza, who donated willingly and freely, as the transaction accounts. And this is a sort of glorified receipt I have, and his signature, crucially, that survived all of these hundreds of years. He donated his farm. I can even tell you the name of the farm. It was called Pre Aldebaran. And Aldebaran is a star, so I'm not too sure what the reason for the name of the farm was, if indeed it has anything to do with a star, which is I think an Arabic name. So that would suggest that the Jewish diaspora had perhaps borrowed some knowledge around the heavens, perhaps, but gave this over to the Templars at their preceptory at Duzon, which was their very large preceptory just outside of Carcassonne. You can't really see too much of it today, but the perimeter of that town is vast and was the perimeter of their preceptory. Well, you can see if you wish to go to Duzon, which is spelt, I suppose, if you look at it, dozen, Douzens. You can see the Templar church still, the one that was constructed by them. So, yeah, all of this sort of, oh no, they didn't have any relationship with the Jewish diaspora or anyone who was an adherent of Islam, or in fact Cathars or anything like that, is actually not quite the case. And I think when we go to extremes and say that didn't happen, couldn't have happened, you then leave yourself open to an attack or to a bit of evidence saying, well, what about this then? How do you, So yeah, that's.
I remember you revealing on this show in recent months that you had identified at least one Sufi Templar. And so, I mean, there you have, certainly if a Sufi might be a Templar, then certainly a Jewish person might be a Templar.
You've got, as I say, the Templar order wasn't just the knights, and you had people interacting in the Middle East, and in fact, the Languedoc, the mysterious area around, Rennes-le-Château and further afield, which had a large Jewish diaspora. And not just that, there was also Moors who were living, who, yes, the armies have been kicked out, but we know that there's in fact, it's now a hamlet, but a hamlet called Maury, near Rennes-le-Château. It's part of the town of Coisa. It's, I think, 3 houses or 3 farms, actually, is named after the Moors. So we know that this is a big melting pot. And of course, if you've got people who are working for you with their own beliefs and interpretations in a very tolerant area, of course, some of their ideas are going to bleed through. Think about what happens when you're in work. You meet people who've got all sorts of strange and wonderful ideas, and sometimes something will inspire you.
That's right. Happens all the time. You mentioned Rennes-le-Château, and I think we would be remiss if we did not mention that we are today 17 January. So that's the day where the blue apples appear at midday in the church at Rennes-le-Château when the sun reaches a certain spot and shines through the window, and it illuminates on the wall across. So it's a little phenomenon. I'm sure there were people up there to view it. And I have not been there on the 17th of January ever. Have you ever been over there on January 17th?
I have, and it is a few years ago, and it is bitterly cold, and there's not much at all open, but it's quite busy. I think some of the restaurants open exclusively for that day to.
Oh, really?
To feed and water weary travellers who've come to see a light show.
Yeah.
Regrettably, when I went, it was quite cloudy, overcast, and the best thing that was shining were the lights in the chapel itself. So
I see. Yeah, I've never been there when it's happened. I've seen pictures of it, of course, and although they call it blue apples, it's really multicolored, isn't it?
Yeah, and
almost like a prism, like a rainbow.
I have to say, well, give a bit of sunlight, and you will see some of the light show, I suppose. In other days, I remember having a look into that. Why is it called this? And there's not really too much knowledge other than it's part of the mystery. There was and is a celebration of some very purpley blue looking apples outside of Girona. and there's a very similar, in fact, tower that looks like the sister of the Tor Magdala.
It does, yeah.
So, and we know that Sonia liked visiting, so I suppose he had some inspiration from the city of Girona across the border in Catalonia, in northern Spain, but Catalonia and all of this. So yeah, it's the 17th. If you're into the Rennes-le-Château mystery and Sonia and all of this, of course, it's a bit like the national holiday for Rennies, isn't it? So
it is. It is. It's so funny because I didn't even realize it until we sat down and I looked up in the corner of my screen and January 17th. Now, what were some of the other things that occurred? I know the priest Berger Saunier fell ill on January 17th. He didn't die until some days later, but he fell ill. What were some of the other things? And isn't it a particular feast day on January 17th?
Well, in terms of feast days, there's one for every day of the year. But
well, that's true.
You do look at the 17th. So I think Sonia died ultimately a few days later, but I believe it was the day that Gély was murdered.
No, that was Halloween. All Hallows Eve was the Gély murder. But there were other associations with it. I'm going to have to, before I open my mouth the next time, I'm going to have to refresh because there were quite a few things that I remember that were tied to January 17th.
Yeah, it's. I remember dates tend not to jump out at me too much, but I do remember the 17th. Going, oh, good God, there you go again. But they tend not to jump out at me for various reasons. That Sonia, we fell ill, yes, but he didn't die until and all of that. But yeah, very interesting day. The sort of in the old calendar, the Ides of the month, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So that was going on today up in Rennes-le-Château, and down the hill in Cuisa, there were lots of hammering and wiring and all kinds of things going on as we renovate a property that we've just obtained to put in a center, a research and tourist center in Cuisa. It's a great location because it's right on the D118 or the Route des Pyrénées. So it's kind of a well-traveled road. You really have to pass by it to go anywhere in the area. If you're going to the sea, or if you're going back up toward Limoux or Carcassonne, you got to pass by our place. So I'll be letting people know when it's actually open for business, and hopefully some of you can make your way over there and fall in love, just like we have with that incredible place. But I'll be spending a lot more time there.
I will look forward to whenever. I believe you've had heating installed.
Yes,
so it will be warm.
We got the heaters came in yesterday, and Tylo, our wonderful electrician, had already hung the brackets. They're wall heaters, which is kind of the way to go in these old houses sometimes. And so they came in yesterday, and they may be in now. He was hanging them, and he also had to, connect them and everything. And then he's putting in some lighting in the first floor, what in France is called the first floor. In the United States, we would call that the second floor. It was kind of dark corridors and things, so he's installed some nice spotlights and things like that, and some.
We'll make a European out of you yet, Renee. Yes, ground floor, then first floor.
That's right. I have learned it, but I do clarify it for my American friends because
don't confuse it in a lift. Just put it that way.
yeah,
I remember
right.
many years ago in Canada getting very confused why I couldn't find my hotel room,
Yeah.
and it just didn't make any sense to me until someone politely said, "Oh well, here we call that." I think it was
Right.
the third floor or something like that.
It's very confusing. I know when I was looking at, not recently, but a few years ago at property listings, I would always get confused when they would say first floor. Well, to me, the first is the one you walk into, the ground floor. Why wouldn't that be the first floor? But
Because it's the
anyway,
ground floor.
when in Rome, and then you know what? Very, very nearby is the village of Campagna sur Aude, where our wonderful friends Jill and Trev live. Jill has her gorgeous little atelier there. So if you go to Campagna, make sure you stop in. Hopefully she'll be open, but you can certainly make an appointment if she's not. But the big news in Campagna is that they are building or putting in a Templar museum. And, as many of you know, there's that wonderful round Templar church. And the museum is actually in a structure that's part of that historical building. So it's going to be really nice. And you guys have heard me brag about James's Templar map that has so many sites that he's marked that have been confirmed. And if they're not confirmed, that information is there also. But it's a great interactive map. So hopefully we'll see that in the Templar Museum. It would be a wonderful interactive big screen thing to have on the wall there. So, and I'm sure they'll love to have it. And I want to have a map in the center as well. And I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe we should have the entire map in the center and maybe just the area around Campagna. No, I don't know. And the other one, or would people, I think maybe since people are going to be coming from around the world, maybe they probably need the whole enchilada.
Oh, they could purchase a printed copy and mark off all of the Templar buildings that they've been to. I know that's pretty much what I've been doing. And
Wow.
I think it'd take, I think plotted in, there's thousands of these places across Europe, really. I think I plotted in on Google. And this took a night. It was overnight to do this, but it plotted out a route, the most efficient route between all of the places. And I think it worked out that it'd take about 83 years to drive to them all.
Oh my gosh!
And when you think, that's a pilgrimage, and I'm probably a bit too late to have to start now. But oh well.
Well, there are just so many. I mean, in you're marking each site with a little red Templar cross.
Yeah.
And in some areas, it's just solid red because there are just so many sites. So it's
well, they were absolutely concentrated. So there are some gaps still.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that there's nothing there. It just means I've not had the chance to plot them. But most certainly, what you can see is the largest concentration of preceptories are really within the long dock itself. And many people have speculated as to why, and I think it's got quite a lot to do with the fertility of the land, the trade. It was a very prosperous place until the French invaded under their king Philip IV, invaded the south and basically stole the land. And now the area is known as one of the poorest in all of France. The Aude and the Languedoc, or the old region called the Languedoc. Whereas one point it was the most prosperous in what we would call today's France.
Right.
And all of that was built upon toleration and a fusion of cultures. I mean, if it really, I've said this a few times, and I've actually said this recently, if it wasn't for the Crusades, the Albigensian Crusades against the Cathars, the Renaissance would have occurred 100, 150 years earlier than when it did in northern Italy. And of course, plague didn't really help either. There are other factors, but genuinely, we had in the area, there's an obscure person. No one knows really what his name is, but someone called the Master of Cabestany. And we know where Cabestany is. That's just near Perpignan. But he was sought out from northern Italy right the way across the coast from northern Italy right the way through France into Spain. And we know next to nothing about him, or indeed her. But there are, you can see what we call the Devil Church, for example, or the sculptures, the ancient sculptures, should say, from him. And you just think that it's a remarkable amount of detail that's gone into sculpting that you really don't see outside of the area. And he was from the Languedoc, as I say, from near Perpignan. So it just gives an idea of the cultural exports as well. That's this our mysterious place in the sun, as it were. Was providing to everyone else, and that includes knowledge and everything else too.
I mean, today, of course, it's a little different, but I tell you, when I'm there, I do have the sense that it's sort of like you do your business and I'll do my business, and we'll get along just fine. There's still that sort of acceptance, at least in my opinion, probably not everywhere, but in probably some villages are probably have a different personality than others and a little bit more accepting. But I don't know. I really like the feeling there, because I was telling someone the other day, it's not like the United States where you get worshipped because you've got tons of money. People don't really care about that there. And if you do have a lot of money, it just might make them a little more suspicious of you, not fawning all over you like we do here in the US. And it's like, what's more important to them is, the kind of person you are, your character, but also if you've got an interesting story, interesting background, that's worth much more to them than if you had a lot of money. Because if you really think about it, why do we worship the rich? I mean, they're not paying my rent, so it's like, what are we worshiping them for?
Your rent's probably paying them.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's a phrase.
I don't know. Maybe one of these days we're going to figure out that it's not the left and the right. It's the working poor and the rich elite. Okay, we won't get political. But.
Well, I wonder why Robin Hood's not been remade in a decent way, I should say. But no, the area has always been a sort of slow hurry sort of idea that, take your time to get to know. And yeah, not everyone does get on. I mean, the complications of history are real. So right. The one thing that, you don't discuss unless invited to, I suppose, but you don't discuss is the occupation by, Nazis, the far right.
Yeah.
Because there are villages who won't talk to each other because of it. Right. And that's a recent complication of history. But there are genuine, my view, when I say my view, my knowledge is that a lot of the religious beliefs from very ancient times are still around, whether it's in the way that people talk to each other or actually believe. We call them the Cathars. We call it Cathar country, which I'm not exactly a big favour of, because then you know, if you go to the brilliant city, the old city of Carcassonne, I remember wandering through the streets some years ago. I think I was given a tour with Tim, and saw the most disgusting thing I've ever seen, Richie, which was the Cathar burger. And I thought, really, is that how they would be remembered? You know,
Like to meet
some
me. Oh,
charcoal
was it a vegetarian burger?
No, it was a charcoal piece of meat. So,
Oh my gosh.
and you just think, you know, that's the sort of Disneyland. But we call them Cathars. The reality of it is, one, they weren't called the Cathars, and
No.
two, the church referred to them as Maniki, the followers of Mani. And of course, then someone said, "Didn't we officially get rid of them about 700-800 years ago?" Yeah, yes. They can't be them, can they? No. So, yeah, we'll call them. We'll call them the pure ones, sarcastically. Yeah. Well, the thing is that says so much about the area, that the belief system. You know, you might have met them with the sword during the great persecution of Diocletian and all of this, who actually was after the Manichaeists, not the Christians, until the Christians go, "See, you're all destroyed," and then Diocletian goes, "And who are you?"
Mm-hmm.
Your turn. But yeah, Manichaeism, very interesting. A lot of the Cathar beliefs are based on it, and actually managed to trace the last vestiges of an active worship of them to the 16th century China. And they, very similar to Japan, were removing Christianity at this period. But the idea that you destroy ideas and beliefs is nonsense. It goes underground.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened. And that idea of a sort of very basic toleration and very advanced understanding is the way that the world works. You really do feel in the Languedoc, Occitania, there's a very ancient. I don't know really how to phrase it. It feels ancient and welcoming most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It has its mood swings. Sometimes it's nope, not today.
Yep.
I need a rest. Usually after tourist season, I've got to say. But it generally is a very, very old place with. You visit some places, usually cities, and I don't think cities are very welcoming. It's hustle and bustle, and if you fall over in a city, generally speaking, people just walk by you.
Yeah.
Not everywhere, by the way. But generally speaking, whereas if you were to fall over in the street here, as has happened many occasions, those who are physically able will come and assist you.
Well, that's, there is I love sort of that brand of French person, those communities. They're very, very patriotic, very, very much into the love of their country and family. Those are the two big things. And I respect that. I really do.
It is kind of the motto of the French Republic, however. So liberté, fraternité, and égalité.
Equality.
And after a lot of repression by the what's called the ancient regime, the old regime, in other words, the monarchs, which out of the monarchies of Europe, probably some of the most repressive against their own, was the Bourbon dynasty and all of this. And others, I suppose, that the Republic was hard fought. And so it might be a love for the Republic, but I think the French Fifth Republic is due to collapse shortly, and Sixth Republic will come around. I think it's more defense of the Republic that you pick up. That, these values are here to be defended.
Well, we certainly are in the middle there of that area where they were you know, it was full of, local French resistance fighters, and there were some pretty heroic things going on during the war by just farmers and others who were.
But again, the Occitan spirit is, if you think about it from a historical perspective, and you tend not to find people making a big song and dance about local history. I think if you're from another country or you're visiting the area, you tend to go, "Oh my God, look at this."
Mm.
Whereas locals tend to go, "Yeah, and it's there. It's sort of weaved in. Why make a big deal about it?" But if you think
on certain occasions, of note in history during the two big wars, I do see a lot of ceremony going on in the little communes where they come out and honor the fallen soldiers, including the Americans. They always include the Americans. It's always very touching.
Well, the thing is, it's again, I'd look at it. If you've got a French army who's coming down and wiping you out during the Crusades, at the time, there was a bit of relief that England was not quite coming into the defense of the so-called heretics, but kind of, because I have a very strong view that Eleanor of Aquitaine was what we would call a Cathar. She was certainly a very proud and very vocal supporter of the troubadours, and very, very, very powerful woman in history, and certainly someone who deserves, I think, a little bit more of a limelight than perhaps, and maybe she is getting a little bit more of that these days. But I do think, in terms of women in history, certainly a very important person. But yeah, I mean, the Second World War, if we're being honest about it, it was the Americans and the Brits who, in the South especially, the Americans who were liberating. So we know Paul Swank, the American, I think he was a corporal,
lieutenant
at Alat Laban, who was responsible for saving pretty much that town from some disgusting tactics that we don't know need to go into.
An amazing story.
But yeah, so there is.
And celebrate him, that one American guy every August. I think it's August 17th, and it was in 1944 that it happened. But the Nazis were on the march on the way to Cuisa, and which is just a very few miles down the road from Alat Laban, where this battle ended up being fought on the road. In fact, on the very road that I was just talking about, where the center is going to be. And by the way, the center is called La Confluence, and it's sort of a play on the fact that we're right at the confluence of two rivers there in Cuisa, the Salles and the Aude, and then and a confluence of ideas is what we're sort of trying to foster there. Where ideas meet and expand, where everybody can contribute, and hopefully everybody will get something from it. But anyhow, so there was a time when he was just by himself, Lieutenant Swank, fighting off those Nazis. He sent the other ones ahead because they had freed some hostages from the German truck, and he said, take them on and go to Cuisa. And that's what they did. And the Germans were trying to get to Cuisa because they had supply depot there. And they did not make it. They were turned back by Paul Swank and a little handful of local men, and I think a couple of Spaniards who knew a little bit about explosives. But if this little ragtag group turned that whole army back, and they never, ever came back to the Aude again after that. They left, did not return. So that was quite a deal that they celebrate to this day.
And that's we got to remember it's very difficult for people who are perhaps not in living memory, have been unoccupied, people to really underestimate the notion of having your freedom and liberty taken from you, and your friends, summarily executed and all of the rest of it. That the impact that has, and yes, it should be commemorated. And again, with the Great War as well, World War One, the Great War, as we often call it, that there are entire villages. There's a place called Aurillac, for example, and you read the list of people there. The population of that now hamlet hasn't recovered. A village of 100, perhaps, maybe just less, but a village of 100 now, 10.
Wow.
Entire generation of people were mowed down in war. So, and it, again, it's what it amazes me about the Ord and the broader Occitan region is that every century there has been some sort of conflict, some ideological conflict. So the wars of religion, which were 300 years long, by the way, a massive civil war with a few sort of interruptions of peace, but very unstable. To the Crusades, then to the Moors invading. You had the Aragonese, and then the Spanish, and all of this. And there's these events that it still retains that welcoming spirit. If you're respectful, and I think that's what else could you need in life, I suppose. But yeah, and incidentally, the D118, the road, I never thought we'd be talking about roads, but there we go, is the old Roman road, actually, to Kilianus, today's Kion, all the way up to Pakistan. And I suspect there is a road that has yet been identified but discussed, called the Via Aragonensis, which was the road crossing the Ariège. I suspect that road connected with it somewhere in the environment of Kion.
And would that have been originally a Roman road as well?
Yeah, almost certainly was, yes. Not a major road, but certainly an important one, which would have been toll boothed and all of this. Whereas the D118, because of the prosperity of the area, there weren't any tolls on it. Which certainly helps, and all of this.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. I do know that when you are there, or at least when I'm there, and I'm sure this is the same for many people, you do feel that sense of walking in the footsteps of your ancestors, or from at least our predecessors, people from long, long ago. You do have that sense of history there that, obviously we just don't have here in any structures or architecture or anything. We believe that, if your house is 100 years old, that's an old house. And what's funny is I think the property, the house where the center is, I believe was built in the 1600s. Well, that's a new house, around there, because like your house that you have it down in the region is much older than that. Our friends, Jill and Trev, their house is much older than that. It's mind blowing to Americans, I tell you.
My house there is sufficiently old for me to be comfortable with. It's 14th century on the ground floor, 16th on the first, and probably renovated again in the 17th up on the second floor.
That's so funny. So your second floor is about the same age as my whole house. And that's the new addition that you've got on.
Well, it just, and I always welcome people who take the plunge and go, yes, I'm going to come. And if ever I've done any tours, I quite like to take people just for the basics to a place to Alet Laban. Who Alet Laban used to have, its old name is by far the coolest name that has ever been given to a place. It was called at one point Pagus Electensis, which is just amazing, and we need to do more with that one. But well, one of the questions that's asked quite often is, well, why is the first floor of American, I suppose, or second? Second. I'm getting confused now. Why is the first floor sort of jutting outwards? And because you only paid tax on the ground footprint of the building. So what happens in medieval buildings is they start building out, on that second floor, first floor, and you end up with this very strange, houses coming closer together the further and further up they go. But that was the medieval tax dodge and all of this. So,
how funny!
Word to the wise.
I wonder if they had any support problems with overhangs.
They tended to, use very good, strong support beams and all of this. I mean, we got to kiss goodbye this Hollywood idea that people were throwing out their, what into the streets from windows above. If you were caught doing that, you'd be in the pillory. In fact, I did read the repeat offender being meeting the gallows, shall we say. No, people would go down and pour it into the drain. So it was still on the floor. It was just, you're not going to get splashed by anything. That wouldn't happen.
Right.
Or if it did, you'd be in deep trouble. As Sonia's brother found out in up at Montazel, who a few days
poop in public.
There was one raucous event. I think it was 3 days before he passed away due to, I think it was complications due to alcoholism. But he was absolutely legless, absolutely blind drunk, and was urinating and throwing beer and all the rest of it, and caused a major problem for his dear old mum. So embarrassed by this priest, who also was behaving badly. So, yes, that is an example.
She had very good luck with her sons, because she had to sue the other one to get any money. He was letting her starve to death.
Well, definitely listen.
One of them was peeing in the street, and the other one was
from a balcony into the street. Yes.
Oh, geez.
So
and the other one was pinching his pennies when he apparently had some money to spend.
He certainly did. So yes, and of course, if you want more on the Sonia stuff, we have done a few shows on that around the real nature of Sonia, and actually he's not this romantic figure at all. In fact, quite a nasty individual when you begin to look at him.
I have always felt like he was conflicted and troubled for some reason. That's how I've always kind of sensed him. And at one time before Bloodline, we were going to actually produce a scripted film about the Sonia story. And I remember at that time, I was thinking, I want the Sonia figure to be troubled, like he's not happy. Stuff's going on. There's paranoia and there's, guilt feelings because, he's probably going against his own belief system and things like that. And I always, because we had done this little short film, in fact, very weird. I just ran across it last night on YouTube. A short film called Roast Beef, Rosbeef, in France, and it's in French. And it's over in Provence. And the guy that was the lead character was a famous French footballer called David Ginola. And
it moved over into acting, Mr. Ginola. Yes,
yes.
We all know him. Yes.
Yeah. I saw him on a train commercial to the Heathrow Express or something like that. I saw him on one of those. But anyway, he was apparently he and Johnny Depp were best friends. And Johnny Depp used to show up to the set and watch David work. Anyway, and I always had this idea, because Johnny Depp always played these weird characters and complex characters. I would love for Johnny Depp to play Saunier, this troubled guy, trying to figure out, which road to take, and, coming into all this money, and very conflicted. But that didn't happen.
No, and there is an actor out there who I think he's not a well-known. He was in The Crown, actually. He played the royal family's vicar and all of this, who would be absolutely ideal.
For Sonia?
For Sonia, yes. So you never know. It could hit the big screens one day. If so, you heard of her before.
It's
but I have to say,
story.
Roast beef is what they call the English in French. That's the insult and all of this, which.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, obviously, English director that we had, my old business partner, and it actually was about meat, though. It was about a guy that came to town, new guy in town, and he was the butcher, and all the women were going crazy for him, and he was sleeping with all the wives, and the men.
Sounds just like Sonia.
Yeah, and the men gathered together, and we're gonna run him out of town. And anyway, it was a short film. It won an award.
And I've just seen the time, Renee.
We're over.
We're over.
Did we get paid for overtime?
I'll see what I can negotiate.
Okay. Time and a half is fine. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening and watching, if you're watching. And hope you'll be back again to visit next week and in the future. And if you are a member of Facebook, please take a look for the site that we've created called La Confluence. And it's spelled just the way that it sounds. And I think there's a couple of different pages that have that, at least part of that name in it. But you'll notice the logo that we have, it's a cross with a rose in the middle. So when you see that, that's the right La Confluence. Please click on it and come and visit and follow us. And we're going to be putting our progress in opening the center there, so you can see when everything's happening. And we're going to be doing some filming soon of some of the renovations and things like that.
Well, good to be back on. I shall see you all soon.
Man, it's been forever. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Take care. See ya.